So, what I'm going to talk about in this episode is achievement come down. This is something that I am the worst with. It's rocked me pretty hard over the last 5-6 years, and something that I had to look into why it was happening, because if I didn't, I reckon I was going to suffer some pretty bad mental problems with how it was affecting me, to the point where like I would achieve something that I would think in previous year or something would be so amazing. Like even breaking my first Guinness World Record, like for me, I held this as like the fucking standard, right? Like when I achieve this, I will feel like X, Y, and Z. And I attached a lot of meaning to these achievements. And then you would achieve them, and like sometimes you'd feel a sense of like pride. Hopefully you would. But it would be very short-lived. And then there would be like a flow-on effect, right? Like this come-down effect where you start getting depressed. You start feeling like you have no purpose. You feel like you've got nothing to strive towards. And I think that this is pretty prevalent in people that are, I guess, more driven. So no offense if you're not driven, but like it is, I think that I've noticed there's more of a common denominator with people that are a little bit more like forward progression. People that are a little bit more present, which is fantastic. They tend to not suffer from this as well. So like ambition can sometimes be a curse too. And that's not to say you can't manage these things and improve upon it, hence why I'm talking about this, right? And this is like why you do things changes. And there's some principles that I'm going to go through that I think would be really helpful if you are someone who essentially suffers from this. Because ultimately what we want to be able to do is set a goal, not attach our fucking self-worth to this goal, achieve it or not achieve it, be proud of what we've done or what we've become while we've chased it, and then just set the next one. Not because we need a goal to be happy, but because like the chase is what we love. That's what we're fucking here for. I think for me, like when I first started out trying to like achieve things, I would like attach my happiness to it. I'd be like, I'll be happy when I earn this much, or I'll be happy when I am able to do this, or when I have 2 Guinness World Records or 3, or like whatever the goal was at the time. And then you get that shit and you realize like, oh, you're still the same fucking person, you dumb shit. Like, so you need to actually look inwards and go, okay, why am I setting this? What it's actually for? Like what do I really want out of this goal? And those big questions will help us feel less of a come down when we achieve things, right? This is really important that you understand before I even go into these like points, right? These like, I guess, more tangible points. The big kind of thing here is you need to set things. I think this is like, if this could preface the whole conversation, you can't set things that aren't true to yourself, right? Like if you set a goal and it's not true to yourself and you hit it, you're not going to feel great off it. And you're going to get some pretty big come down effect off that. For me, like I really struggled with like entrepreneurship / this like business, a suffering interest that I had, right? Like I would always set big entrepreneurship goals because that's what I felt like I had to do. And then when I would achieve those, I wouldn't get a lot of fulfillment from it. Where I would get more fulfillment from doing a marathon that no one knows about, and I can look at myself and go, fuck yeah. Like, so that's where it's like understanding your why is really important to manage this kind of like come down effect. In other words, chase your own fucking definition of success. Don't chase some other fucker's definition of success, right? It's got to be true to you. And the other thing, got to talk about this all day, but the other thing with this is as well is like when you're setting goals, you need to attach a lot of different things to it. So you need to attach intrinsic motivators, extrinsic motivators. You need to understand that the goal might just be simply something to aim at, not necessarily something to hit. The goal is not what you were done it for. Maybe it's the things that you learn while you are approaching the goal. I know personally I've thrown down hundreds of goals before on a fucking piece of paper, knowing I'm not going to hit any of them, but they've been simply something that I can strive towards. So that kind of helps you let go of the fact that if you don't achieve these things, I'm not saying it's a fucking excuse either. Like, don't set goals that you know you can achieve. Cop out on them and be like, well, I became a better person. Yeah, anyway, it's a double-edged sword there. So anyway, there's 5 major reasons that I kind of have found that... 5 major reasons that I've found that has affected me, right? And I think that knowing these 5 things has helped me manage this come down. Now, the first one is anti-climax, right? So basically when you set a goal that is what you would define as something quite large, and you put all of your work, all of your energy into it, you start to build up how this goal may feel. And this goal starts to like take a life of its own. And then when you get it, the goal is gone, right? And when that happens, you feel this like anti-climax because you've just built it up to be this huge, big thing. When the chances are that the goal itself, like the actual achievement, like the trophy in that reward is probably what you've built up too much. And that anti-climax is what makes us feel shit when we essentially can achieve it. It's like someone saying, this is the best movie ever, and then you go and see it and the movie's trash, right? Like your expectations are so fucking high that there is this anticlimactic effect, right? And then essentially once you achieve it, these intense emotions are just gone. All right, now the second one, and the one that I think affects me the most, and this comes down to understanding who you are as a person, but for me is number 2 is the loss of purpose. So like for me, I love having a goal to chase, right? Now, if I do not have a goal to chase, I will set a goal to chase. And that used to be because I wasn't happy. So I would set something that I could distract myself with. Now I realize it's not because I'm not necessarily happy. It's because I fucking the most alive and the happiest when I'm chasing shit. So whatever I'm chasing, I don't give a fuck anymore. Like it's changed. Like I just set shit because I love chasing shit. And that's where it's about understanding like what drives you and stuff versus achievement goals. But anyway, loss of purpose, right? So what happens is you attach all this meaning to this goal. You have so much purpose. It drives all of the actions you do each day, whether it's buying a house, whether it's getting into a certain university degree. And then you get in and you're like, well, I don't have a meaning behind what I'm doing anymore. You know, my days are just my days and I'm fucking over it. Like, and that's where it's like, you've attached too much of your personality to this goal. And that's a really troublesome thing to do. And it's pretty normal to like achieve this big thing or this big thing to you and then feel a loss of purpose. So I think understanding these things help us explain them from a logical point of view so we can emotionally change how we're feeling, right? Like so we can be like, okay, this is logically why I'm feeling this way. So next time I can set a goal with, you know, maybe the purpose behind the goal wasn't to hit the goal. It was just to learn about who I am as a person while I was doing it, right? While I was setting that goal. You know, who I became when I was training for that goal was more important than the trophy that I got. And understanding that won't make you feel like this big drop of loss of purpose, right? Now, the third one is unrealistic expectations. There's a funny story about this one, right? And I think the best example is like I was on a really shitty reality TV show, right? Like when I say shitty, I mean like I had a not that great experience because I was on there for like fucking 3 episodes. But when people got on there, you could tell that they were like thinking that was going to change their whole life, right? Like people were like thinking, oh, you're going to get famous, you know, myself included. I had a little dabble in that feeling. But I wasn't as much like, especially the type of show it was, it didn't really align with who I was. I just kind of carpe diem that shit. But for some people, like this was like their thing. They're like, I've made it, you know, like I'm going to get on this reality TV show. I'm going to come out with it with famous. And you could just tell how fucking miserable they were that they didn't. Like, you know, they weren't verified. They didn't get a fucking $1 million followers. They didn't get sponsorships. And 95% of people will just be forgotten. And that's the thing is like you attach sometimes these really, really unrealistic, I guess, wins and things to this goal that aren't actually true. And you've got to be careful of doing that, right? So that's number 3. Number 4 is identity shift. So this one's really funny. Just one sec, I'm gonna sip this coffee. So identity shift, right? Like accomplishing a major goal can sometimes lead to an identity shift. So I'm going to read this one because I think this is really important. If you've been striving for a particular career milestone and finally achieve it, you may need to adjust to a new professional identity. This transition can be unsettling and may require adapting to new responsibilities, expectations, or environments. So like in other words, you know, you're been a banker your whole life and now you're a manager. You have to go, that's a really weird example, but you have to go through this identity shift and people attach a lot to their identities, right? So for me, like I used to attach it to like entrepreneurship. I was like, I'm an entrepreneur. So if I wasn't doing something that was entrepreneurship, I'd feel like shit, right? And we often attach something to one thing. And this is really dangerous because we shouldn't be attached to one thing. Like if you think about a human being in general, right? There's so many roles you play. You might be a loving father. You might be a motivating speaker. You might be a religious preacher. I don't know, I'm just spitting shit. But the point is you have so many different roles and identities that when you just strive towards one and you think you are one, the moment that you achieve something or that's taken away from you, you feel like absolute shit. And it kind of comes back down to a loss of purpose, right? If you think about like athletes are the perfect example because they train their whole life to be a football player. Boom, fucking knee reco, done. Okay, well now he's a piece of shit, right? So like that's in his mind. If I'm not a footy player, I'm fucking no one. But really, like what was he this whole time? He was a hard worker. He had perseverance. You know, he did the things he needed to do when he didn't feel like doing them. He might have been a loving husband. Like there's just so many personalities and identities that he did have. And then the guy loses one of them, the one that he's built up, and he feels like shit. So identity shift is really, really dangerous. And it's something that I think you can manage. And all of these things you can manage in that pre-goal phase, which comes down to like understanding who you are as a person. And that's how this shit ties in with resilience, right? Because and mental toughness, like achievement and sustaining achievement and doing the things you don't want to do comes from self-awareness. Self-awareness comes from looking into who you are as a person and being like proactive, working out why things are happening. Always being curious, like why am I feeling like shit after I've just achieved this awesome goal? I'm not just going to let myself feel like shit. Well, I might, but I'm also going to look into why. Like, did I set the wrong goal? Was the goal true to me? Did I build up too high of expectations? Like, have I attached too much of my identity to these goals? Like, you can ask yourself these fucking questions so that you can understand yourself better. So then you can stop feeling like shit when you achieve great things. Like it's a process that you have to be very intentional with. And I think that in life, we're not intentional enough about understanding ourselves. And if we were intentional, we would be a lot happier and more fulfilled in our own lives, right? And we should be excited sometimes by these negative feelings too. Like when you achieve something and it feels like shit, you know, take some pride and take some happiness and relief in knowing like, okay, like this is cool. Like I don't feel that great when I've done X, Y, and Z, but there's a reason here. And now I know that I'm going to find it. And when I find it, I'm going to work out why, I'm going to work on it, work out where I went wrong. And then the next fucking thing I achieve, I'm going to feel like the man, right? Or I'm just going to feel like the man the whole way through striving towards it. When I get it, yeah, who cares? I'm not exhausted. There's no come down effect. It just is what it is. Let's move on. Life is the chase, not the destination, right? Like I think Tony Robbins said something like, you know, move forward progression is that's what happiness is about. And I kind of agree with that. I don't know if that's the exact quote. Fucking sure it's not, but something along those lines. And I think for me, that's a big value of mine that I've come to understand is that forward progression is for me happiness, not the destinations, right? And that's where I think if we attach ourselves to the destinations, we're going to be fucked. Last one is psychological exhaustion. So this is like, imagine had this big goal. The one that I would reconcile with and I remember very, very clearly is doing like a bodybuilding comp, right? Because in a bodybuilding comp, your whole life is fucking just in a shit show, really. Like, especially when you're not used to it. If it becomes your life, then it's probably more normal. But for me, especially when I did it, it wasn't my life, right? Like I trained, I ate pretty good. And then all of a sudden I'm trying to get to like 4% body fat. It was a crazy experience, but I remember when I achieved that, I had so much of a come down because of that psychological exhaustion. I actually didn't have anything else. Like all these other points I was talking about didn't bother me the same way that this psychological exhaustion did. And that became because I didn't have social connection. I didn't speak to my friends and family at all, really. Like I was miserable in that area. I was just so locked into that goal that the rest of my life kind of fell apart. And the moment I hit that, the achievement was great and I felt really fulfilled, but I was just couldn't do anything anymore. I lost the love and joy for training. I lost the love and joy for eating clean. I couldn't stop myself eating. And this is an example that if one of these areas affects you, it can still give you this come down effect on achievement. And I think like it's very easy to be like, oh, okay, well, I only have one of these areas. That's all right. But one of those areas in an extremity can fuck you up. And I've definitely felt all of these in my life when I've achieved something. Sometimes all at the same time, sometimes one more than other. But I think that the number one thing that I've taken away from this is that if you're very, very, very intentional in the pre-setting of your goals and intentional with understanding yourself, this becomes a lot less prevalent, right? Like it doesn't happen as much. You don't get this come down as much. And you know what to do. Like if you hit a goal and you don't feel as good as you would have liked to have felt, it's okay. You move on. It becomes quicker and quicker and quicker. So yeah, look, I know this is just rambling on about some stuff today, but like, I think that if you're someone who feels like when you achieve something, you don't get what you would imagine you got from it, and you feel like you lose yourself a little bit in some way, shape or form, then you have some work to do on yourself. And at the end of the day, it's like, there's nothing worse, in my opinion, than there's a lot of things worse actually, but there's nothing worse than achieving something and feeling like shit when you achieve it and feeling like you lose yourself after you've achieved it. It's a really demoralizing feeling. And I think that, I know that it is fixable 100%. So those are some of the 5 things that you can look at when next time you maybe achieve something and you start to get that come down effect. Cheers.